Evet arkadaşlar, öncelikle hoş geldiniz. Sabancı Üniversitesi'ne sizlere çok teşekkür ediyorum nazik davetiniz için. Ee, Şimdi İngilizce'ye döneceğim. Belki diyeceksiniz ki işte Türkçe olsun, ama İngilizce'ye dönmek istiyorum. Çünkü sunumun İngilizce. İkisini birden, İngilizceyi görüp Türkçe'ye katiyen çeviremiyorum öyle birdenbire. O yüzden İngilizce devam edeceğiz. My career actually took 35 years in Canada and the US. I graduated from Boğaziçi, as Serdal said, with a marketing major. And at the time I graduated, this is, you can imagine how old I am. It was Robert College. Upon my third year, it became Boğaziçi. And nobody really knew at that point what marketing was. And nobody, even in Europe, it was just a North American profession. And I decided to move with my family to Canada and spend 5 years. That was our intention. 5 years in North America, and so that I can actually become a better professional with more knowledge on marketing, because I loved marketing. And the reason why I loved marketing, I definitely am very thankful to Boğaziçi University, because the curriculum was absolutely superb. From linear algebra to calculus to physics to social psychology to political science, everything you can imagine, we studied. So it was both the science and arts, and it's so typical marketing. And I fell in love with the profession. And then I moved to North America to really enlarge and enhance myself in this and become really one of the best. That was my vision. You know that if you don't have vision, you have nothing. And I will emphasize this very strongly throughout the 60 minutes. First, the 5-year vision became 35 years. Now, the only reason why it became 35 years, because I found and got involved with absolutely superb opportunities. It's not like Turkey where you need to find somebody you know or somebody referring to you. It was like, take your CV, meet the people. If they like you, they hire you. So I really fell in love with that kind of system because I really couldn't find any job at the time, when I graduated. And then 35 years passed by, and then the nostalgia of the country of Turkey started starting bubbling up. And I returned in 2012, at the end of 2011. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know if I wanted to get into corporate world. And then I realized that in Turkey, marketing was one of the most misunderstood careers in the country. It was just incredible. And the B2B marketing was even worse. And I did, my expertise is on B2B marketing. So I said, okay, well, maybe I can help. Maybe I can contribute. So I started, as Serdal said, at Doğuş University and Işık University, actually, giving lectures on strategic marketing management. Also, the last semester that I was working at Doğuş, they gave me entrepreneurship and innovation. I had not given a lecture on this before, so I studied. I composed my lessons, and usually this was an MBA class that was in English actually, and usually in MBA classes, they come in at 8 o'clock at night, they're tired, they're all working young people. Usually 20, 25 people were in the class at all times. And the last semester, the last course was entrepreneurship and innovation. And the first day I went to the classroom, I said, oh my God, there are like almost 100 people in the classroom. And I said, gee, is this what you were waiting for? And one of the students, and students are very honest, very open in what they say. They said, no, hocam, we had credits to complete, so we thought this would be very easy. I said, fine, what can I say? And basically the MBA classes were more focused on putting the MBA on CV than really applying it to the places that they work. So the class finally ended, and they completed their points and they got graduated. After that, I got a message from one of the students I'll never ever forget. And she said to me, she said, the only reason I came back to the university because I couldn't complete my MBA, and I had to take 2 classes. And I thought one of them would be this, just to get the points so I can graduate. I knew nothing about it, but I thought it would be easy to pass. And she said, but after the class, my whole world changed. After the class, she said, I became a different person. My vision changed, my roadmap changed, and now I am on a roadmap that I really, really want to get on. And that made me, of course, very, very happy. Now, today, I'm not going to teach you methods of market research. I'm sure you study those in the university by very valuable professors. What I would like to talk to you today is really real life, because marketing cannot be just theory. It won't work. Business life is different. Business life is very, very different than what we learned in the university. It has to be applied based on the experience, circumstances, markets, customers, sectors, because the world is so dynamic. Marketing is probably the only career that changes almost every day. So you can't just, one advice I want to give to you, if you are studying on this kind of, within this area, do ever not stop with the education that you got from university. You need to update it every single year, because the world is changing and it will continue changing. And I found a lot of advantages of doing it. And in order to really teach and help young people like yourselves, I thought I had to be one step ahead, knowing everything that happens presently. So that's a huge value, and I strongly suggest you do it. So today we're going to talk about entrepreneurship and innovation. And my major focus is why it doesn't happen a lot in our country, because that's very important. Some of the reasons can be resolved, some of the reasons cannot be resolved, but it needs to be resolved. It needs to improve for our country, for the economy, and for everybody that really expanding their horizons, especially the young ones, the people that have a vision to go after, and it's absolutely crucial. So that's what I'm going to focus on. And I'll tell you the whys and the hows, and also what never should be done. What are the things that should never be done? So hopefully it will help in the end. Before I start, I'll go back to 2001. This is 9/11, the famous 9/11 in the US. It was a pandemic, some sort. It basically mixed up the whole world. It absolutely disrupted everything, lives, airlines, travel, everything changed. Every rule changed after 9/11. But what happened after 9/11 is that a lot of new technologies, a lot of innovation came about, like robotics, biowatch, social media versus journalism, remote control planes, police and fireman radios, wireless technology for FBI, airport body scanners. We never had those. Lasers, drones. Now we're all familiar with all of these, but it did start after 9/11. So having a crisis in the world definitely fuels innovation. There's no question. Now I'll go back to 1970s. I'm going back instead of going forward. 1970s, I lived in Canada. There was a huge economic crisis. It actually impacted just Canada and the US at that point. Huge crisis because of the oil prices. It went very high. So the rising unemployment, it's very easy to let people go from work in North America, very, very easy, nothing like what we have in Turkey. The stock market went upside down, inflation went up. It was a huge economic crisis. But if you look at the screen, look at the names that were born out of that crisis. These are all startups. These are all startups. And now they are the huge brands in the world. So let's not take being a startup lightly. I think maybe we are. That's why we don't have this huge, humongous startup that became a huge, humongous company. Microsoft, FedEx, Southwest Airlines, which is the largest airline in the world today, carrying number of passengers, Oracle, Apple, Starbucks. These are incredible accomplishments during the crisis. Actually, in the US, based on what consultants say, market researchers say, almost every very important innovation comes during this, emerges actually right after the crisis. There are a lot of reasons for it, but I'm not going to get into it. Now, one other you might not have heard of this. Now, I'm going back, started 2001, going back to 1970s, centuries ago, the 19th century, 1800 something, when Graham Bell invented the telephone. Graham Bell invented the telephone in Connecticut, in the east side of the US. Nobody wanted the telephone, absolutely nobody. No, they didn't care because they said, well, why should we need it? We never had it before. So he couldn't find an investor. He just couldn't find an investor because nobody wanted to use the telephone. So Graham Bell, talking between two friends, one of them is a pharmacist, put a phone in the pharmacy, and the other one was a best friend of his that actually they talked every day over the prototype that they had developed. Now, one day in Connecticut, there is a huge train wreckage. So hundreds of people actually die. And at the time when the train derailment took place, the only person that could immediately reach the hospital was the pharmacist in the pharmacy that Graham Bell was talking to. So based on that event, not only, hundreds of people died, but there are also a lot of people that were saved. That was the biggest probably event that changed the fate of the telephone. A month later or 2 months later, an investor in New York City came to meet Graham Bell when he heard the wreckage of the train and the people dying, and said, I'll invest in you for manufacturing purposes. I'll commercialize you and will manufacture this. And the people in the United States all of a sudden realize this is not something to be taken lightly because it's a matter of life. Now, this is probably the most important lesson we can learn from, because innovation by itself, technology by itself, anything you dream of by itself that doesn't touch people, that do not solve a problem in a human being's life, it is not innovation. It is nothing. It's your own pleasure doing something. You have to find a problem. I'm going to say this maybe 100 times today. And this is what happened to Graham Bell. And just briefly, in case you haven't heard, Graham Bell's own voice. Okay, now that you know, so if you hear him again, you'll know it's Graham Bell. Now, after all these crises, of course, now since last year, we've been in a pandemic that was unprecedented. Now, and it's still ongoing, and nobody really knows exactly when it's going to stop. And you would think that during this pandemic, when the whole world is in it, you would think that the countries would be more amiable with each other, would bring it in a total peace around the world. Well, it didn't happen. And millions of people died. But what happened is, as you all know, a lot of new things emerged from it, a lot of new innovations, that affect human life. It had to be done. It had to be done. So something to be innovated, and we have to first think about, okay, I have this technology today in today's world. Don't ever forget, every company around the globe manufactures everything. There is no company, one company, that has such a special technology that nobody else has. It doesn't exist. Look at Apple. He's selling phones. My God, we have hundreds of different manufacturers, maybe 1,000, I don't know. But every time he changes it or adds something to it, it becomes an event. It becomes an event. And that's why starting in 1970s up to today, it is one of the most valuable brands in the world. It's not easy to keep up with a brand. Brands can die immediately. Think about Kodak. Young people might not even remember it, but they were the inventor of photography. And now they disappeared around 2000 because they couldn't cope up with anything. Why? Because they completely dismissed the changes. Not just technologically, but the needs of people. How come when Sony had the Walkman, Apple completely basically destroyed it by coming up with the same technology? Apple's technology is exactly taken from Walkman. Well, what did they do? They added two things in there that has nothing to do with technology. They added things in there that actually changed the way people live. First of all, they made music listening legal. And then they made it very small so that it can be carried around very easily. So what I'm trying to say is, innovation is innovation when it touches people and solves a problem. So it's not just our dream of a technology. I read before I prepared the presentation, I read a report by KPMG about startups in Turkey. And basically, great information. And there are hundreds of startups in Turkey, quite a few, but almost 99% of those startups are software companies. And you know what they do? They started up, they prove themselves to the investors, take some money, and then they sell the company. This is how we work in our country. This has to stop. Why this has to stop? Because everything starting from a startup can become a humongous brand around the world in a certain sector, which adds a huge value on the country's economy. If today we are not, as a country, known as number one in a certain sector, that's exactly why. Because we want quick money, we are not patient, we don't research enough, we only rely on technology, And we don't even think how this is going to change the lives of people around the globe. And then we don't wait for the result, because something like research is continuous. It has to be continuous. You can't just make a research 5 years ago and then use it 5 years later. That doesn't work. So all these crises are great. What I'm trying to say is these crises are great environment for becoming innovative and getting a startup going. So in Turkey, we have a problem with imports. I don't know if you know or not, but most of the manufacturing companies, including the company that I work for, the highest budget costs that they have are raw materials and other imports. So imagine that. If that is the case, if we don't get into increase our startups becoming bigger companies and not reducing the import, will impact eventually in the sustainability of the economy in Turkey. We are addicted to foreign brands. And this is probably the biggest disappointment I had when I came back to Turkey. We are addicted to foreign brands. Whatever sector you are interested in, whatever sector you work in, whatever sector you want to work in, doesn't matter. The rules apply. The same rules apply. We have to leave the brand addiction. In order to do that, startups need to come up with things that we also manufacture or find out or find a solution by adding something new to it. By adding, even if it's a small thing, by adding something to it. This is why we don't have a global Turkish company. We do not have a global Turkish company. They call themselves global, but it's not global. Global means you absolutely sell on every single continent and people recognize your name just like that. We don't have that. And it's sad. It's very sad, especially for young people. This is your future. This is our country. The more we focus on this, the better it's going to get. So when you choose a subject, let's say, you could think about that to see how it can actually emerge and shine domestically so that I can gain strength and go outside. Of course, to do that, you have to have a strong vision, a lot of passion, and a lot of marketing, basically effective marketing. The other thing is, being global, there are certain rules that we do not really obey in Turkey. Now, I'm making generalizations because I've been lecturing and educating a lot of companies and their staff, and I get the feedback from them. Every time when I first came here, let me tell you this. The only reason why I got into corporate world after all those years again is because in every class, the students were saying, "Hocam, this doesn't work in Turkey." Every single day, over and over again, the people that are working, young people like yourself, they're working and they say, it doesn't work in this country. Well, there's a problem. There's a problem. So finally, when I got the opportunity to work for Bıçakçılar, which I'm very happy to be at, this is the only reason I try to prove that it works. If we change our mindset, if we go over our traditions, if we go over our judgmental thinking, if we open our brains, especially if we have a strong vision. If you look at the Turkish companies and their vision statement on the website, every single one of them are more or less the same. You know what they say? They say, we want to be a leader in Europe. Really? Okay, fine, good for you. But who cares about you being a leader? Does a customer care about being you? I mean, oh yeah, I'm going to buy from this company so they can become a leader. Is there a customer like that? No, there is not. It's just like being an innovator, being a startup. You have to make a promise. The vision is making a promise to the customer, to the market, in how you're going to improve their life, how they're going to improve their customers' life. So those are very poor environment, at least in Turkey, but a school like yours, which is absolutely one of the greatest, and people like yourself, very smart, think about those things before you really make your roadmap to the future. And think about the country, because there is no way Turkey itself can be branded if there's not one sector that actually comes to the front. Now, how we're going to do it? We're in digital age. Digital technology is just a technology. Digital marketing means nothing really. Digital marketing means you do your communication over digital channels. But one thing is very changed, is strongly changed. What is that? Now we don't see each other face to face, and this will probably continue for another year or so. So the communication that was already poor, because one thing I always say, the biggest benefit of Zoom is we learned, I'm talking generally, don't get me wrong, we learned how to listen without interrupting the person, which means you really have to hear and then listen, really listen before responding. So that's great. But there are now basically trade shows on the Zoom. I don't know if you ever watch one. We did 2 of them in South America, and it was great. But the challenge is your communication has to be super and more than super, because the only thing they see you physically, but the only way they learn from you, from your words that come out of your mouth. So the sentences have to be perfect. And you only get one chance at first impression. The words need to be selected very, very carefully. We need to improve our communication to the end level to be able to use the digital technology. Digital technology is great because you can do business with the whole world, anytime, anywhere. So that's super. Actually, it's a huge opening for companies to become global. Even in this environment, we are still not getting there because the communication itself is not necessarily the greatest. Again, this is a general statement for the country itself. Now, the dangerous assumptions in becoming an entrepreneur, setting up a startup, this is not only dangerous, you shouldn't be doing it. I mean, dangerous because it's ill-fated. You know, at the end, you will not succeed. Customers will buy our product because it's a good product. No, absolutely not. Because products are made by everybody. Product is a product. Technology is a technology. Everybody uses the same thing. And copying technology is the easiest thing in the world today, in this digital world. I ask every class, I ask the students that are the working students, you know, that come from various businesses, I ask them the same question. If I were a potential buyer from you or a customer, why would I do business with you? 99.9% uses one word and one word only. And I'm sure as you listen to me, you know exactly what that word is. It's called quality. What is quality? Quality means absolutely nothing, because the perception of quality is actually differs. It differs from person to person. So quality means nothing. Our value statement has to be ours and ours only. It only comes out for us that we know. No other people cannot say the same thing. Because it's technical superior, no, there is no differentiation like that. Technology is technology. Everybody uses the same networks. Everybody uses the same IT software, IT networks. Everybody uses it. Unless you add something to it that touches the customer or the market, then you're okay, just like Apple is doing. Customer will agree about our product being great. No, if somebody says, I'm the greatest, nobody will believe you until you prove it to them. Another weakness that we have is we like talking about ourselves. If you go to the websites of all companies, you'll see that you see the picture of a factory at the very opening landing page, and then about us, you know, we did this, we did that, this is a family, this is my name, this is how we got this far, all these things. But there is absolutely no message to the customer. When the landing page is your first impression to the world. If we want to start a startup to globalize, that web page has to speak it. One example you might not know much about is the metal industry, especially the mermerciler. You know, I don't know much about mermer, but it is incredible how wrong they, business-wise, they commercialize or cannot commercialize. And I asked them why, because you see on their website, you see the pictures of the mermer, you know, with all the veins in it, and then it says Afyon mermeri, Bursa mermeri, whatever mermeri. So everybody knows in the world where Bursa is, where Afyon is, you know, like assuming that. And there's no other message. So what do people do? They click on it based on the picture, they look at the price. If it's not the lowest price, they leave it. We are competing on price because we do not have a differentiator factor and a factor that will actually add value. Now, the reason why I'm sharing all these things with you is because when a startup starts with these in mind, there is no way they cannot not be successful. We can't just do it for quick money. We can't. We shouldn't. Of course we can, but we shouldn't. So customers are the most important thing. Without them, there's no business, as simple as that. If you look at an Italian manufacturer of the same product, you know, you open the landing page, you know what it says? It says our mermer is Leonardo da Vinci's mermer. Our mermer is Michelangelo's mermer. We can't say those things. We cannot say that there is no mermer in our country, in our history, the palaces, the museums, the whatever, everything. Imagine gone over wars, fires, earthquakes, nothing happens. So this kind of approach has to change. And I know if it changes, then the startups will become bigger and bigger, and hopefully we'll have at least 2 or 3 global companies, just like Apple, just like Nike, just like all the others that represent our country, because it will mean the future is sustainable economy. The reason why I'm saying this is because of this. In the old times, before the internet, the global value chain looked like this. Basically, the raw material, the spinning, let's say cotton, there's the spinning machine, there's the weaving, tailoring, and then goes to the distributor and ends up as a shirt and ends up on somebody's, you know, somebody wears it. So that's the last user, the end user, as we call it. But it was so focused on sales and product. This is marketing 1.0. This goes back to Second World War. And, you know, unfortunately, we're still using this strategy in our country, in most of the, especially family operations. The value only they see when the person wears the shirt. But this is now completely changed. Why? Because the global value chain now is the same route: raw materials, production, logistics, consultancy, marketing channels, wholesalers, distributors, and then, in our case, there's the hospitals, doctors, and in the end, who advantages from it? The patient. Now, in this whole area, the largest area up there is B2B. Right in this very small part is B2C. In our country, mostly B2C marketing is pretty good. We do it really well. This is for basically products that are used directly by individuals. So the decision-making of purchasing is based on the logic of an individual. But in the B2B, no, there's a huge group of people who make purchasing decisions. So there's a huge difference. But one thing, I will conclude this chain. One thing is very important to know. If there was no B2C at the end, if there was no patient, if there was no everybody stopped wearing cotton t-shirt, let's say. If the demand gets to zero in that part, the whole chain up there is absolutely gone. Because there is no demand, always is generated from the very last point. That's why B2B marketing came in a lot later. And so when you, let's say the software companies, especially in Turkey, are mostly, these are the startups, mostly software companies. Software company is even more difficult to market, because you're selling something that is completely invisible. And that's why it's not necessarily going to commercialization, it's being sold to another company. It's much easier to a much bigger company that has the commercial aspect, because it's very difficult to sell the invisible. How do you prove yourself? What if I pay you the money, you set up the system, the IT system, the software is in there, and then you make the investment as a customer, and all of a sudden it doesn't work. So it's a challenge, but it's a very complicated commercial environment, and we need to be very, very careful with all these things that I mentioned. So how do we initiate a successful startup and grow it? Now, before I start, I want to share with you the company, the new startup, actually, the diamond in the startup group is Soranus. I'm sure you know Serdal and Dr. Özge. This is how I met with them. They did absolutely everything right. They found a problem. They found a problem that actually became extremely important for women population around the world. And of course, their expertise, especially medical expertise of Özgür, commercial expertise of Serdal, all came together and they did it all right. Even they did everything right, they are the greatest people that I met in my life, and they still couldn't get the EEC reaction positively at first round. And then we started to talk to each other, and I said, listen, I'm not an expert on this, but I might be able to help. The only reason, and we went to EEC together, the three of us, and the day we went, we knew we actually got it. And I'm sure Serdal will agree with me. And for me, it's a huge success of these two brilliant people. But I didn't do anything there because I don't have the knowledge that they have. But you know what I had? Their knowledge, especially Dr. Özgür's knowledge, the medical knowledge, I was able to translate it into their language. All these people that were sitting there were investors. They're investors. That's how they're going to decide on it. But what I said was so simple, but it was simple language. because they're not doctors. They don't have medical expertise. They don't have any of this. This is very similar to any business world. You know, if the salesman sells directly, relates itself to only the purchasing manager buys everything every day. They're not all engineers, or they're not, you know, they don't know the technology, they don't know the markets, they are just purchasing guys. So in order to be effective, if you ever start a business, it is very important not to be boggled down with what you love. You have to really look at it from the other perspective as to how I can actually get my message across by translating it on a simple level, so the people who might be interested in me will understand. So this is very important, because even in not just startups, in all companies, salespeople do that. We can't do that, especially in B2B, when something is manufactured, something is an industrial product. So of course we were very happy, and this was just before COVID started, so we were lucky not to get COVID and return to Turkey. But I know it's going to be an extremely successful global company. I truly, truly believe that. So how do we initiate a successful company?
Hocam sesiniz kapandı. Çok özür diliyorum.
Pardon, niye ki? Açık benimki.
Ben katılımcıları admit ederken dokunmuş olabilirim hocam. Çok özür diliyorum. Devam edebilirsiniz.
Rica ederim. Benimki açık gözüküyor. Şimdi duyuyorsunuz ama, değil mi?
Evet.
Tamam, oldu. Everything has to start with researching a problem. Now, research actually is the easiest thing in the world these days, because everything is on the digital platform. As long as we search everything in English, we'll be okay. Yes, there are a lot of information we might not be able to find, but one suggestion based on my experience, if you're searching for something, an answer to something, instead of putting keywords, put exactly what the question is. And then it comes up with maybe 20 options. And make sure, take your time, look at all the options, because sometimes you have no idea how valuable one source is when you can't even see at that point it answers your question. So that's really just an advice, you know, depending on, of course, what topic you're talking about. So it has to start with a problem. Problem can be anything: psychological, mental, physical, emotional, egoistical. You know, people buy foreign brands for ego purposes. You know, why would you buy an Armani bag for $2,000? You know, I mean, that has nothing to do with well-being, but for them it is, and that's okay. That's okay. So life-saving things, a healthcare industry, of course, is very, very important in this, because everything is about saving lives. So you first have to find a problem that already has no solution, which means we have to do comparative analysis. Because if, like Apple did, he found out, you know, even when Steve Jobs started the Mac, the mouse itself came from Xerox company. They had a research center. They invited him because he was getting famous at that time, and the head office weren't paying any attention to the researchers, engineers on the other side of the US, and they were bored, so they invited Steve Jobs, and then he took his engineers with him, went through the R&D center, talked to them. They gave him every information that they know. And then what happened is he bought the technology of the mouse because he wanted a fast mouse for $4 million. So sometimes, you know, the mindset of Steve Jobs still exists within Apple, but what he continuously think is, how is this going to change somebody's life? And then it becomes a brand, and of course the power of brand is absolutely amazing. Now, let me share just a few videos with you, and it will give you a break too. I don't know if you all know, I'm sure you do. There's a company called GoPro. Super example of what a startup is. Super example. There's a young man, graduates from Stanford, and then the mother gives him a ticket as a gift for graduation, and he goes to Indonesia for surfing because, you know, Californians love surfing. He goes to Indonesia, but what he wants is he wants to take his picture while he's surfing. So he tries to invent a band where he would put the camera on, but it kept getting wet. So that didn't work out. And then he changed the designs and all that. It didn't work out. So he liked extreme sports, and he wanted every angle as he is doing the sport, in this case, surfing. So he comes back to California. He gets two other people, friends with him, and they sit down and design a camera that they can use in any extreme sport, whether it's surfing or swimming or whatever it is, they can use it. But they have no money. They just do the design, then they get in a minibus sort of thing, and they go to all supplier meetings around the country in the US. And they basically present it to them looking for investment and for production. And they did. A Chinese guy or Far Eastern, I can't remember if it was Japanese or Chinese, he said, I'll do this, I'll manufacture this for you. And I think he's still the one who's manufacturing it. Nobody knows who that is. And then they come back and they set up a small office, just one room office, and they start working on it, and it starts being produced. And then all of a sudden they become a sensation because it's the first time ever anything like this was manufactured. Now, what happened after that, you can imagine, Sony and others like that started designing and manufacturing similar cameras. And then they changed it they added videos. And then what happened is Apple came up with the video commercial, or the emphasis on the video, on the last edition of the phone. So they were completely bombarded with competition every other year. That's why I'm saying technology by itself is not sustainable. It is not, it can't be, because it changes all the time, because our minds change all the time. And so what happens is, actually a couple of years ago, they became almost bankrupt. And I'll share the video, a very, very brief video with you of the CEO, the guy, actually, the young guy that founded the company, and explaining why they went back to their roots. Because they were making a lot of money, they became aggressive, they lost their focus. This is the worst thing you can do in any company you set up. So they said, our target is this. This is why they love us, because GoPro also started being sold to like policemen, firemen, you know, all that kind of thing in the business world. But they eliminated all that because they said, we're not that. If we agree that we're not that, if we keep the differentiation in the extreme sports, we will definitely be sustainable, because these are the people who actually love us and promote us. So listen to him.
What's happening, everybody? I was 26 years old. I was about to take a surf trip. I realized there was no camera that was going to allow me to film myself and my friend while we were surfing. So I went to work on this idea to strap a camera to my wrist, and my prototype worked so well that the light bulb went off, and I thought, wow. And I came back and started GoPro.
This glass was already very, very hard in our previous cameras. It's now twice as hard as it was before.
Part of the magic of GoPro is that we're not just building and selling products. We've also helped build and grow a movement. We're GoPro, and this is what we do.
It's rare that anyone gets to create.
Okay, I'm just, am I running late on time, Serdal?
Well, you're just on time. You already finished your 60 minutes. But
I do have a lot of slides, but I'll go fast.
Yes, maybe 10 minutes if you can finalize in 10 minutes, that would be great. Thank you.
Maybe let me do this because will be when you share it with them without the videos. Let me share the videos because there are a lot of ideas in it. And then they'll also have the presentation. Is that okay?
Yes, that's fine. You have 10 minutes, so you can use it.
Okay. So Apple itself, look at its vision has not changed since 1970s. This is why they're Apple. They would never advertise. They never have a commercial. Other people do it. Watch. This is about innovation. Just carefully watch it. Again, it is how we make people feel. It's not the technology, it's not the product by itself, but how does it feel? Now, before I leave, I definitely want to share the Nike story. This is a super startup. These are all startups, believe it or not. Of course, now you're in, because of your age, you're young people, you can't even imagine them being startups probably, but that's how they started. This is Nike and their message.
Listen up, babies. Life's not fair. You get no say in the world you're born into. You don't decide your name. You don't decide where you come from. You don't decide if you have a place to call home or if your whole family has to leave the country. Yeah, it's messed up. You don't decide how the world judges a person like you. You don't decide how your story begins, but you do get to decide how it ends. Yes!
So do you see any products in there? Do you see any commercials in there? They are dedicated to the movement because it is all about changing the world. the first thing you need to think about when you do think about startups, how do I change the world? What is my knowledge on, what is my passion in, you know, which idea makes me passionate, and then get into which technologies I can use. Or if you want to invent a technology, invention is something, innovation is something very different. Innovation has to touch the world, has to touch the people, actually. So let me just do this because we're running out of time. I want to share the information about Nike because it is such a good story and a summary of how a startup actually becomes successful. Now, all this is based on research, of course, because to find a problem, you have to research. There's no question about that. However, just do it is their motto, as you know, the slogan. There are things that you should never do. Number one, develop a strong vision. If you don't have a strong vision, nothing happens. Don't even bother. A vision, you have to have your own vision of the world, of the future. Take the risk and test the market. Again, researching. If you're not a strong visionary, just don't do it. This is my recommendations. If you're only in love and excited about technology for the sake of technology, just don't do it. If you're only interested in quick money and start a millionaire life at a young age, don't bother. If you don't have patience and relentless passion, just don't do it. That's why it's so precious to start a startup with all this passion. Look at this. This is amazing. Let me just... This is 1964 when Nike has not become a Nike, okay? This is the BRS was the company, or not the name of the small company that this guy, the founder, was actually importing shoes from. So this is the first prototype. But what he did is he created this prototype by using the iron that his wife uses as a first waffle saw, because what they did is they put rubber into the iron, and this design, the prototype, came about. They don't have any money at this point. They only have the brain. They only have the brain. This is what I'm saying about having the passion and having a vision. Imagine starting like this. Imagine starting like this. In 1971, the famous logo, and then it just went on to I'm not going to show all the videos because we don't have time. FedEx is another one. FedEx is the largest logistics company in the world. FedEx is a startup. He started a bit more easier because he got, I think, $3 million from his father when he graduated. But then he had to find investors, of course. One thing I'm questioning, and maybe you could question, most of the founders of startups in the United States are from the best universities. We also have some of the best universities in the world. When I went to North America, nobody, absolutely nobody questioned who Boston University was. Nobody. I never had a problem with that. So how come from all these great universities that we have, we're not getting these people? Because our vision is very weak, because we don't have again, this is a general statement because I experience it with a lot of people. In order to see the future, we have to completely accumulate knowledge. When we have knowledge, we get braver to see the future. And this is the basis of losing that fear. Resiliency is a must. But again, innovation is innovation unless It's not innovation unless it doesn't touch the people. So we talked about all these things. I'm just getting a little bit faster. Do not take the power of marketing lightly. Marketing is not how it's defined in our country. We define it as sales and marketing. First of all, even sales and marketing is wrong because sales start after marketing, first marketing and then sales, but everybody calls it sales and marketing, and salespeople do marketing. So please take it very, very seriously. Let us be brave in developing a vision. You have such academic curriculum, and look, you're working on research techniques and research and all that. This will give you the whole strength of being brave about trying to see the future without a fear, because most of the time we create our own future, our own vision. If we have a strong vision, it happens. But that vision, meaning how it lights up our road to the future, you have to have that light. If you don't have a vision, you're blind, because vision means to see. It means you don't see. If you don't see, you go nowhere, because you don't know how to go, you go slow, and you get scared, and you have fears. So you will never be successful. So let us also not forget that it's all about customers. It's not about us, how great we are. It's not about us, how technology is great. It's all about who are we trying to help? Which person we're trying to change the life of? Which market needs this solution to this problem? These are all research topics, because not all problems exist in all countries. Maybe you can start focusing on the problems in Turkey because it's easier domestically, and try those and then extend it to the other markets. You could do that too, because we do have a lot of problems. So problem solving is the essence of innovation. And lastly, just before we started, I saw this on LinkedIn. This is the problem. This is a major problem, and we need to change it. This is, I don't know the company, and I covered the name, but basically this person is promoting the company. And what did he put there? We produce quality, high capacity, lasting value. What kind of message somebody can get from this? Nothing, absolutely nothing. Neither the picture nor the message, there is nothing. There is nothing. So the way we think has to change. Our vision has to be very, very powerful. And it's also good for you as individuals. The more clearer your vision is, the more passionate you're going to get. The more knowledge you digest, the braver you're going to get seeing the future. Very, very important. Please do not forget at least the vision part, because it is the light that takes you from point A to point B. If you don't have the light, nothing that lights your road up, then you cannot drive. You can't in darkness. But people like yourselves with such good education, I'm sure your knowledge is extremely rich. And I also owe it to Boğaziçi in a way, because most of these things I learned there. And then, of course, US was a great place from a commercial perspective to at least improve the communication skills. Very, very important. I know we can do it. We have great young population. As long as we do not get addicted to foreign brands, but we know we can do the economic sustainability, and it depends on young people to start great projects. So I'm sorry I had to jump up because I didn't realize maybe I talked too much. That's why it.
Çok teşekkürler.
Rica ederim.
Teşekkür ederiz. Çok sağ olun. Bizler için çok faydalı oldu özellikle vurgularınız, videolarınız ve mesajlarınız. Ben hızlıca katılımcı arkadaşlara sorayım. Sorusu olan var.
Okey.
Yazabilirsiniz ya da arkadaşlar varsa chat box kısmından ya da buradan da sorabilirsiniz. Gülder Hanım çok teşekkürler. Zaten
Ben de
slaytınızda
çok
sunumuzda paylaşacağız. Arkadaşlarla çok güzel bir sunum. Çok teşekkür
Çok
ederim.
keyifliydi. Çok
sağ olun.
teşekkür ederiz.
Ben de teşekkür ederim. Sağ olun, sağlıcakla kalın.